In 1966, a farmer named Cho Han Kyu stood at the edge of a rice paddy in South Korea, watching his neighbors do something that troubled him at a deep level. They were pouring bags of white powder, synthetic fertilizer, imported from industrial chemical facilities, purchased on credit, into the soil. And every growing season, they needed more of it. The soil was weakening, the bags were becoming more expensive, the farmers were becoming poorer. Cho had grown up working that same land with his own hands. He remembered that the soil had not always required this. He walked home that evening and began writing down everything he could recall about the farming methods that existed before the chemical era arrived. Welcome to Lost Homestead Vault. What Cho was recovering was a system that Korean farmers had practiced for centuries before synthetic inputs transformed agriculture, a closed-loop method of feeding the soil using only what the farm itself produced. Kitchen scraps, eggshells, vinegar brewed from rice, fermented plant material. Ingredients every household possessed in abundance, ingredients that cost absolutely nothing. Together, these materials created something synthetic fertilizer companies cannot replicate in a bag: living nutrition, immediately bioavailable, drawn directly from the land itself. The practice had ancient roots extending as far back as written agricultural records exist. Korean and Japanese farmers had understood something for generations that Western agricultural science would take another century to formally confirm. Calcium is the structural foundation of a healthy plant. Without it, cell walls fail. Fruit splits open before it ripens. Tomatoes rot from the blossom end before they ever turn red. Leaves curl inward. Growth stalls. And no level of nitrogen or phosphorus additions can restore what is missing if calcium is the deficiency. The problem, crucially, was never a shortage of calcium in the soil. It was that the calcium present in soil exists in a form that plants cannot access. Locked behind a chemical barrier they lacked the tools to cross. And the answer to that barrier had been sitting in the kitchen the entire time. Eggshells are 95% calcium carbonate, an extraordinary concentration of precisely the mineral most soils are deficient in, but calcium carbonate is insoluble. Crush eggshells and scatter them across a garden bed, and they will still be sitting there, largely intact, years later. The mineral remains imprisoned behind its carbonate wall, unavailable to root systems regardless of how much you apply. Cho and the farming tradition he was studying understood this barrier. They also understood what dissolved it: acid. Specifically, the acetic acid present in vinegar. When eggshells are introduced to vinegar, something occurs that appears almost like a chemical magic trick. The shells begin to dissolve. The liquid fizzes and foams as the imprisoned calcium is pulled free from its carbonate structure and converted into calcium acetate, a water-soluble form that plant roots and leaves can absorb directly and immediately. Carbon dioxide is released as a byproduct. The acid is neutralized in the process. What remains is a clear liquid containing one of the most bioavailable forms of plant calcium that exists in nature. By the time Cho's methods reached Hawaii in the early 2000s, researchers at the University of Hawaii conducted formal testing of his approach. The results were difficult to dismiss. Farms applying Cho's methods doubled their crop yields while simultaneously reducing water consumption by 30%. They stopped purchasing pesticides. They stopped purchasing fertilizer. Meanwhile, outside those research plots, a different mathematical reality was taking shape. The global synthetic calcium fertilizer sector generates billions of dollars annually, selling farmers the calcium their soil inherently contains but cannot access. The industrial calcium nitrate market alone is valued at $14 billion. Every bag of synthetic calcium sold represents a purchase that replaced something a farmer once produced at home from breakfast waste. This was not an accidental outcome of progress. It was a business model constructed on deliberate forgetting. When American agricultural extension offices expanded their influence across the country following the Second World War, they were institutionally aligned with the same chemical corporations that profited from synthetic fertilizer dependency. They published guides specifying what to buy, not what to make. They trained an entire generation of farmers to regard kitchen scraps as waste and soil fertility as something purchased from a supplier. The concept that a mason jar and a dozen eggshells could permanently resolve a calcium deficiency was never going to appear in a USDA bulletin. There was no commercial incentive to include it. Cho understood this dynamic clearly. He spent his professional life traveling to more than 30 countries, teaching farmers how to close the loop, how to stop purchasing what they could produce freely themselves. He trained over 18,000 students at his Natural Farming Institute across a lifetime of practice. He never patented the method. He never commercialized it into a product line. He gave the knowledge away openly because he understood that was the only mechanism by which it would survive. Here's how to do it. Begin collecting your eggshells. Rinse them with warm water and allow them to dry completely. Once you have collected a reasonable quantity, spread them across a dry pan and heat over low warmth for roughly 20 minutes. Do not scorch them. Simply drive off any remaining moisture and the inner membrane. The shells will lighten slightly in color. Allow them to cool completely, then crush them into small pieces. Place the crushed shells into a clean glass jar. Pour in vinegar at a ratio of approximately 10 parts vinegar to 1 part shells. Any vinegar will work. White, apple cider, or rice wine vinegar. The acetic acid concentration is the functional element. Within minutes, you will see bubbles rising from the shells. That effervescence is the calcium being released from its carbonate prison. Cover the jar mouth with a breathable cloth rather than an airtight lid and set it out of direct sunlight. Allow it to rest for 7 to 10 days until the bubbling has completely ceased. Your water-soluble calcium is ready. Strain out any remaining shell fragments. Dilute 1 tablespoon of the finished liquid per gallon of water. Apply it directly to soil during watering, or use a spray bottle on foliage in the early morning hours. The calcium reaches plant tissue within hours, rather than months. The results in the harvest are observable and direct. Tomatoes that previously cracked or developed blossom and rot. The flat, leathery brown patch that ruins the base of the fruit stay firm and intact. Squash fills out symmetrically. Peppers maintain tight skin. Harvested fruit stores longer because calcium-rich cell walls resist internal breakdown more effectively from the moment of picking. This is not anecdotal. It is what calcium does at the cellular structural level. The change is also visible beneath the surface over time. Each watering cycle gently adjusts soil chemistry, and as calcium compounds accumulate, they open pathways for other nutrients to move more freely and reduce the compaction that years of synthetic inputs create. Soils that had hardened from chemical overuse gradually regain the loose, workable texture that allows roots to expand fully. A few jars on a windowsill, a dozen eggs, a bottle of vinegar. This is what a $14 billion industry replaced. Not because the old method failed, but because Cho's mason jar cannot be manufactured, branded, distributed, or sold. A technique that costs nothing and works indefinitely has no place within a supply chain engineered around annual repeat purchases. The knowledge did not disappear on its own. It was crowded out by an industrial system that required your dependency to remain financially viable. But it survived in the notebooks of a Korean farmer who refused to watch his neighbors borrow against collapsing soil. And it survives today in your kitchen, in every eggshell you have ever discarded without understanding what it carried. The calcium was always there, locked in place, waiting. 1 jar of vinegar away from becoming the most effective thing you can provide your garden. If this vault opens something for you, subscribe to Lost Homestead Vault and hit the bell. Every like and every share helps preserve what they tried to erase.